Exactly a year ago, I came and gave a presentation about some improved developer experiences that we had been building for Liferay Workspace, and I was really proud of them, proud of what we had done. And then I saw the DXP Cloud team, and they showed their demo, their new product release, and I was really excited for that. And I was excited to say, hey, can I use the things that we built for Liferay Workspace for the Blade Watch and things like that? Can I use that for this new DXP Cloud? So we got together, we looked at it, and we found out no, we can't at all, because we use containers. Everything's in a container, and the tools, a lot of the tools that you just built, they don't work in a container. And so I was really sad, and that I couldn't use these new tools we had built with our latest product at Liferay DXP Cloud. And you may be wondering, well, don't you guys work for the same team? Why would you build at the same company? Why would you build things that way? Well, if you know how Eduardo and Zeno and their team operates, they go very fast and they build stuff very user-focused, and their staff was really small, and so we just didn't have the bandwidth to connect. But now their team has grown, and so my team and their team, we've been able to interface this year and synchronize and unify the tooling, at least around Liferay Workspaces. So that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So some of the goals that we've had in working with our two teams, both Liferay Workspaces for DXP and DXP Cloud Workspaces, is just let's standardize on a project layout. The DXP Cloud Workspaces had a little bit different layouts, some different files that were in there, and so when it comes to the Liferay service, the actual Liferay Workspace, and so we said, no, let's just use one layout. So as far as Liferay Workspaces, we're going to have a standard project layout for both DXP Workspaces and DXP Cloud Workspaces. Now, DXP Cloud is going to have more files because there's a much broader scope with different services and database, backup. And so there is going to have a superset of files. But when it comes to just the Liferay service, just the Liferay Workspace, your modules and your themes and your OSGI configs, that's going to use just the standard, one standard layout. So it'll be really easy, seamless to upgrade and upgrade to the DXP Cloud environment. So another goal we have is to make sure that Liferay Workspaces are container-based out of the box, or by default. It's going to be the new focus of our tooling. And so also we did some work around the Liferay Docker images that I'm going to show today. So we have a few different teams that are using the official Liferay Docker releases and then building tooling around it. The patcher team, the release team for deploying hot fixes and patches to it. Our team building client Docker images, so when you finish your workspace and you build it, you can build a Docker image that's a child image off of the main Liferay image. And then, of course, DXP Cloud, they have their own images. And so our teams have gotten together and said, okay, let's make sure that we are obeying the contracts that have been set forward in the official Liferay images. All Liferay images have like a contract of where you put what files and how things boot and start up, bootstrap. And so our teams have collaborated to make sure that we're not going to mutate the Docker images in a way that override each other. And so I'll show you some of those synchronization that we've done. And then lastly, a focus that my team has had is that we just want to support containers from the get-go. We don't want what happened. We don't want to repeat what happened last year, where we spend several months working on a new tool and then find out the assumptions that were made when we designed the tool don't work in containers. And so we're going to just be supporting containers from the very beginning. And another goal around unifying the developer experience, and this is more of a long-term goal that will take many years, but the idea is that we want to move a lot of the tooling that we've been building specifically for Eclipse or IntelliJ these last few years. We want to move those into language servers. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the language server protocol from Microsoft, but it's a nice tooling independent or IDE environment independent way that we can ship the same set of tooling to multiple editor environments to kind of support the long tail of IDEs that are out there now. So hopefully we'll have time to take a look at some of that. But firstly, I want to show you guys a little tour of what we've built in the upcoming release of Liferay Workspace when it comes to the Docker tasks, so dealing with the Docker images. We added these tasks earlier this year, or late last year actually, but then through the process of the work we've done with the DXP Cloud team, we have kind of refactored these and kind of redesigned their output a little bit. And so I want to kind of go over those with you today. Has anybody used the Docker tasks that are in Liferay Workspace already? Okay, so just a few of you. So it'll be new, so you'll be seeing it for the first time. So the first task that we have inside of a workspace is Docker deploy instead of deploy. So you're used to running your portlets, doing your development, used to saying Gradle deploy. And so we have another task called Docker deploy that's the same thing as deploy, but it knows how to put it in one of the Liferay Docker containers. The good thing is you don't need to know this name, Docker deploy. You can just keep saying deploy, and it's going to put it in the right spot in the container in a way that it knows, put in the deploy folder. But another thing that we've changed is that when we originally built a Docker deploy, it would only copy the configuration from your workspace. It would only copy the configuration you were targeting. So if it's a dev environment, UAT environment, or production environment, it would only copy that configuration into the container. So one of the things that the DXP Cloud team asked us to do is they want us, so we were going to copy all of the configurations in the container, but only one of them will be active. But the benefit here is now these new Docker images they support a scripting extension, so the workspace Docker builds that we do now can actually have all of the configurations in there, but it only activates one when it starts up based on the environmental variables. So I'll show that a little later. And of course, Docker deploy is going to put all of your modules and your themes in there like normal. There's another task called create a Docker file, and this is you specify what's your base Liferay image, DXP, or just Portal CE. And then you're going to, it's also going to set up this Docker deploy folder, mount it in the mount directory. And so like I was saying, the Liferay Docker images have a contract of where you put different things. So this is going to set things up based on that. It's also going to copy all the configs over to another folder. And then a new feature we have in the new Docker images is the ability for tooling, such as Liferay Workspace, to configure the Docker image before Liferay boots. And so we have a pre-configure extension, pre-configure script that runs, and what that's going to do is actually apply whatever configuration to the environment. So that way you can have the same Docker image and can deploy it, and then it can run in different modes, dev, test, or production. And so this is one way that we're enabling the DXP Cloud team to just use our Docker configuration straight away, because that's kind of how their workflow works, is you have a build that is a Docker image, and then you can push those to different environments. So, and they do many other things to those Docker builds. They're not just exactly what this outputs. They do other additional, more advanced things, but at least this is the base. And we have synchronized on the tooling, so they know how we set ours up, and they can do additional things beyond that. And then there's another task that's actually building the Docker image, and it has some default for the ID and for the name, but you can customize that based on whatever you need. Okay, so that's building the image, and now I want to create the container and actually use it and develop with it. And so when we create the Docker container, we have a create Docker container task, and this is going to set up the mount points. It's also going to set up the work folder, which I'll show you what that is in a minute. Oh, there's my time. Okay. It also opens up some ports for development, so your Java debug port, the web, and then your Go shell. And also passes in some environmental variables for you automatically, so you don't have to set these up. And this is just, these can all be modified with the Gradle task, so you can go in the Gradle DSL and change these up if you don't like the defaults that we have. And then, of course, start the Docker container. It gives you a name. And what's nice is all these tasks, since the name is known, they can clean up after themselves. And so whatever you start, then we can stop that same container. We can rebuild the image. And then the logs Docker container just shows you the log, shows you the server log. So let's look at that here. I have a Liferay Workspace, and in here I have specified that I want the new GA2 Docker image is going to be my base. And so let's just tell it to build the Docker image. We'll take a look at what it did. So you can see here it's actually copied all the configurations in there, and each of these are ready to be applied. So this is not just This is actually a merge of the common. If you know how Liferay Workspace configurations work, you have common configurations that's applied to any environment. You have the Docker configuration that's applied only when you're building a Docker image, as opposed to a local bundle, which it doesn't include the Docker folder. And then of course you have the other environments. So this is actually if you look at this is a complete copy of all the configuration, so that now we can launch any of these environments. And then here's the Docker file. So you can see the mount points it sets up. And then here is that new script that runs on this new extension point. So this is a script that runs when the Docker image, when the container starts up. And it's not that important. What this Docker is pretty simple. I promise this script doesn't try to take down any websites like mine from 21 years ago. But it might be interesting for you to know. And the reason why this has a 100 in the prefix is a lot of this is provisional. It might change by the time you see it when we release it next month, or hopefully early next month. But this is so that when DXP Cloud uses this image or uses this configuration to build their images, they can then also add their scripts, and then it'll be executed in a certain order. So they can make sure, do I want the DXP Cloud script to run before or after the Workspace script does? So that's why you see that number in there. Doesn't really matter what the number is if you want to add your own scripts. Because another thing that we've added, because we have these scripting extension points in the Docker images now, if I go back to, that's the output folder, if I go back to the configurations, you can see that you can supply your own scripts. So under each configuration, I can just add a bash script that I want to be executed. And so when the image is built, it'll copy your scripts into the scripting extension point in the image, and it'll run those. So this is a script that it would run for any environment. And then, of course, you can have scripts that would only run in, say, a production environment. And let's see, actually, I want to not run that right now. Okay, so that's a little bit about how the images can be built. So now I will, and I can say, if you can see here, there's the image that we just built. Now you can customize the tag name and things like that by just editing the DSL. So now if I okay, so the reason that's unspecified is because in my DSL I said that the thing that's going to be after the colon will be the root project version, but I forgot to set the version. So now let me build it again. So there we are. And then if you say Gradle clean, it'll actually delete the image. So now let's run clean start Docker container, and then we'll run the logs Docker container. So this will build the image and deploy everything, do all the configuration, and it will start the Docker container, and the default environment will be whatever your default Liferay Workspace environment is. So local is the default. So it's going to run it in the local configuration. You can see the shell script running there. And while that's starting up, I will talk to you about the next thing that we did. So that's the Docker tooling, and here is just a diagram of the task dependencies. That's not that interesting. So right now, we don't have all the task avoidance that we want in there. Eventually, we'll add the task avoidance configuration so that if you haven't changed the image, if you've not changed any of the modules, and then you just say stop the container, start the container, the Docker task will be smart. I mean, the Gradle task will be smart enough to not run again. That's one thing in this kind of provisional version we have right now. It doesn't work. But there's that diagram. Let me talk a little bit about Blade Watch. So the feature that we worked on for last year's DevCon that doesn't work for DXP Cloud workspaces was Blade Watch. And that was because it only worked for OSGI modules, and it required, from the container's point of view, it required access to the user's project sources. And so that's just one of those things that doesn't work for containers. The way the DXP Cloud containers worked, you deployed, you copied things into them, they didn't have access to things outside. And so, and we had this problem in the old Blade Watch where, since it was installed as an OSGI bundle, even though it was watching for changes and updating it, you still suffered the bundle reloading, and if you were working on like a core module, any modules that depended on that one would still have to go through the whole life cycle of starting and stopping. So it's still, even though it was better than what we had before, for many of the use cases that people had, such as editing JavaScript files or CSS files or JSP files, it was still taking too long to redeploy, even in that scenario. So what we did is we actually developed a new task called deploy fast. And what this does is it's not like a full redeployment. It actually just copies over the JavaScript, CSS, or JSP files into a work folder, and this bypasses the redeployment. So we've modified in the runtime, I think in GA2, we have support in there so that the CSS, JavaScript, and JSP servlets, they know that when I go to load, when you're in dev mode, there's actually a property you have to enable. Let me look at that. So work directory override enable true. So this is in the portal developer properties. If you just include that, you'll get this one. But what it will do, those servlets will look inside the work directory to see if you have additional sources that you want to load and you don't want to redeploy. So the deploy fast task will copy JavaScript, CSS, it'll compile it. For JSPs, it'll compile the JSPs, and it'll put it in the work folder and then not do a full redeploy. So this is, and another thing that's nice about this will work for wars, whereas the old Blade Watch didn't work for wars. This one will work for wars. So we were really thinking about JSF or Spring MVC portlets that have a long redeployment loop that you can just use deploy fast for many cases. But now there are some cases where deploy fast won't work, and you have to do a normal full redeploy. So this is changing configuration, changing a Java component, or things like that. And so we looked at it and we said, you don't want to know when do I need to deploy fast and when do I need to run deploy. So we actually have added all that inside the Blade Watch. So it knows based on what file you change, do I need to do just a fast deployment or do I need to do a full redeployment? And this will work for containers now, which is really nice. So I have the portal running here. Let me load this. So the module should already be deployed. Just by starting the container, it automatically deploys everything. So I should see my demo portlet. Okay, so I can go to my workspace and just say Blade Watch, the portlet. That's going to do one initial deploy, and then after that, it's going to just be watching for updates. So let's go in here and change something. I'll just change the JSP first. I feel like I've done this demo a lot. Change the JSP, reload it. So there you can see it didn't do a full redeploy, it just did a deploy fast. So you can look in the output of the server, this was the original start, it didn't redeploy the portlet. So we can just show that again. You can see there's no redeploy, but it's able to see the new content. So this works for JavaScript, CSS, and JSP files. So it works for simple JavaScript. We don't yet have it supporting where if you have a TypeScript module or something that requires transpilation, we actually have hooked in that, but we still need to optimize it a little bit. It's not much faster than a full redeploy at this point. So, but it will work for simple JavaScript files, just, console.log. Now, what if you change something that needs a full redeploy? So if I go in here and change something in the portlet, well, then Blade Watch knows, okay, I need to do a full redeploy because you changed a file. So here we see the redeployment. So, and also to show you okay, so that's the Blade Watch that I wanted to talk about. And let's go back here and we can actually stop the container. And then what I'll do is I'll show you, we can launch the same image and just pass in an environmental variable, and it will run it in production. So if we look here, we'll show that in just a minute. Yeah. So I'll run this DevCon demo. And here I'm passing in an environmental variable saying I want the production configuration. So I run it. You can see it executed this config, this shell script. It's in production. So another thing that we've added, so while that's starting up, another way that we're trying to unify the dev experience or unify the tooling is around the language server protocol. So, and we built a prototype of this, and I'll demo that. But the idea here is that you have these language servers that know how to give code assist and validation for certain file types. So JSP files, CSS files, Docker files, whatever. So we wanted to be able to add this type of support for Liferay development. And the nice thing about that is that we just have a language server, it runs, and then it can support multiple development environments. So Eclipse, IntelliJ, VS Code, Sublime, it's a long list, VI, Emacs. It's a long list of clients that can then call into that language server using a JSON request and can get information back. And so we've built clients for a Liferay IDE, of course, and then we've built client for IntelliJ, thanks to Dominique, who we demonstrated his work last year in the Liferay IntelliJ plugin. So thanks again, Dominique. He gave us the contribution for adding language server support into IntelliJ, which is kind of interesting because IntelliJ, I mean, the language server protocol is a sort of a competitor to them in the sense that they don't have native support for it. So, but with Dominique's help, we've added that to our Liferay IntelliJ plugin. And then, of course, VS Code. So one way that I can show that is, let's go back, well, let's see if our Docker container is ready in production here. Production. Okay, so that didn't work. Let's take a look here. Okay, not quite for sure why. Oh well, I won't debug it in front of you. But I do want to show you the language server protocol that we'd added. So let me just edit one of these portal ext property files. So here, this is just one example. We've added it to just this property, just as kind of a proof of concept, is like, could we do this? Could we deliver the same set of tools to 3 different editors? This was a new thing for us. And so we did that with just editing Liferay property files. So I open up a portal ext property, and now I can get, well, looks like it's, let me restart here. Maybe it works from IntelliJ. Okay, so this is the same workspace inside of IntelliJ. And let's edit just a Gradle properties file. So here you see the language server is giving IntelliJ the list of available properties that it can have. And not only is it giving it a list of available properties, but it actually can do completion, or it can give suggestions. So we know here's some Docker containers that will work. And then also it can do validation. So if you want to set some directory, let's see. So I'll actually show you the directories that are in there. And it'll complete those. Let's see if it's working in Eclipse now. Okay. What about VS Code? Guess I should have tested this. Okay, well, come find me in the booth afterwards, and I can show you the language server. So we need some help building these language servers. But we hope to engage the community and add more support for Liferay development. But what's nice is that it'd be the same tooling for validation, code complete, across all the different editors. So that's pretty much. Let's see if there's anything else I was going to talk about. Back to the IDE integration. So you'll be able to launch Docker containers from within the IDE, and then both IntelliJ and Eclipse, and see the Liferay Docker container. So let me see if so it'll actually build the image within, and then when you hit start and debug, it's actually starting the Docker image. So we can see, so it started the Docker container. So we'll add this to both IntelliJ and Eclipse, the Docker integration. So you can see the console and you can control the container from here. Let's do the roadmap. So some things that we have planned for next year. Of course, we're going to unify the workspaces. We're going to release that next month. The improved Blade Watch that supports deploy and deploy fast and works with containers. We're going to be adding the support for the new integration testing bridge in the portal, the one that was released for 7.2. And so we're going to add support for that, scaffolding, so that you can write integration tests, all of the boilerplate code, all the boilerplate workspace configuration for integration test. We're also going to support testing inside Docker containers, so that you can, instead of doing start testable Tomcat, and then you can just run those tests in a container. And then the language server extensions. Another thing we're going to do is support adding JavaScript portlets to your portal via configuration only. So this is the idea, is that I use NPM or I use Yarn, I use some other tool to build my JavaScript portlets because it's front-end tool based, but I want to integrate those with Liferay. Now, right now we have support for Liferay delegating those JavaScript builds. So if you add a JavaScript portlet inside Liferay Workspace, inside the modules, it knows how to invoke the right front-end task to build that portlet and then deploy it to the portal. So that's working today. But what we're going to add here is that, okay, I build my JavaScript portlet somewhere else. I'll just going to give you a URL. So here it is on a file system, or here it is on a CDN, or whatever, another microservice that's in DXP Cloud, whatever. And I'm going to just add that. I'm going to just tell you about that as a text file, as a configuration. So we're going to add that so that Workspace can know where these other front-end portlets are. And then the roadmap for Liferay IDE 4.0 is to just be container first and use the language server. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove a lot of the legacy stuff, plugins, SDK, all of those things that we've had in there for 10 years inside of Liferay IDE. And the new 4.0 will be based on based on those unified principles of container first, language server extension, and hopefully it will be faster and better for your DXP Cloud, DXP and DXP Cloud workspaces. Now, be sure and go to Tiago's talk. I don't know if it's in track C or if it's where it's at exactly, but he's going to show you how to go from just a standard DXP workspace and then how to move that into the cloud. And so he'll be kind of showing you many, many more things about how to take that. But hopefully everything that you see here, not hopefully, it will. Everything that you've seen here will work, plus many other things in the DXP Cloud workspaces. So thank you very much for your time. I'll be at the booth, and I can tell you the script hack story, or we can talk about anything else you're interested in. So thank you so much.